Starting with the Russia-Ukraine updates. Will it expand its military advances beyond Ukraine and into Europe? A new report now, based on alleged US intel reports and inputs, says that it is very much possible. But Trump's intel chief says there is no chance of Russia invading Europe. Now, a recent news story claimed that US intelligence reports continue to warn that Putin has not given up on his aims of capturing all of Ukraine and reclaiming parts of Europe that once belonged to the former Soviet Empire. The report, which cites 6 sources familiar with US intelligence, differs from comments by President Trump and his Ukraine peace negotiators, who have said that Putin wants to end the conflict. US Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has slammed this report. She said that the report was an example of deep state warmongers and their propaganda media trying to undermine Trump's peace efforts. US is playing host to both Russian and Ukrainian delegations in efforts to hammer out a peace deal. She instead claimed that US intelligence actually assesses that Russia does not even have the capability to conquer and occupy Ukraine, let alone invade and occupy Europe. Gabbard's thoughts were echoed by former US National Security Advisor, NSA, Mike Flynn. He even went a step further and claimed that the European Union, which he called minus the United States, desperately wants war with Russia. He claimed that CIA is in cahoots with MI6 and others in the European intelligence agencies, adding that these and other warmongers in our own administration, as well as the Congress, want perpetual war. Then, on the other hand, a top Ukrainian intelligence officer has warned that Russia intends to expand its invasion and it would happen sooner than later. Kirill Budanov, head of defense intelligence of Ukraine, has stated that Russia intends to occupy the Baltic states. He claimed that according to the original plan, Russia was supposed to be ready to act in 2030, but now the plans have been adjusted and revised to bring the timeline forward to as early as 2027. Russia controls about 20% of Ukraine's territory, including parts of Donbass, Zaporizhia and Kherson provinces and Crimea, the strategic Black Sea Peninsula, and Putin claims Crimea and all 4 provinces, suggesting that they belong to Russia now. Reports say that Trump is pressuring Kiev to withdraw its forces from the whole of Donbass as part of a proposed peace deal, and Ukrainian President Zelensky has refused to cede territory, and his stance has been supported by his European allies. Now, on Friday, European Union leaders agreed to give Ukraine a loan of nearly $105 billion to plug looming budget shortfalls as the conflict approaches the end of its 4th year. But they failed to agree on using frozen Russian assets to come up with the funds. The plan to grant the loan to Ukraine has also invited criticism from EU's own members. Hungary's Viktor Orban. He claimed that the loan put Europe in the direction of war. Orban says that since Europe will only get the money back in case of a Ukrainian victory, Russia would have to be defeated for this money to ever be recovered. There seems to be a division in which EU and the US, they seem to be looking at the Russia-Ukraine war very differently, as what is being suggested from these statements coming in from leaders. Joining us on the broadcast is Scott Lucas, Professor of International Politics, Clinton Institute, University College, Dublin. Scott, thanks so much for joining me here on the broadcast. Tulsi Gabbard, let me start with her statements. She's slammed reports suggesting that it's the deep state warmongers who are trying to derail Trump's peace efforts. Who are these warmongers that she's referring to? And is there seeming to be a larger crack than one would want to admit at this point between EU and US when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war?
Well, the cracks within the Trump administration. Let's get to the facts. US intelligence agencies, career officials, have issued a series of reports that Vladimir Putin's intentions are unchanged going into the 5th year of his full-scale invasion of Ukraine, which is to break up the country. And indeed, Putin said on Friday that his war aims are unchanged, that he wants more territory, and that he wants to get rid of the Nazi regime. In other words, he wants to overthrow the Zelensky government. The U.S. intelligence agencies say there are threats to other parts of Europe that used to be part of the Soviet Union. The facts are is that Russia actually occupies part of Moldova, illegally, that in recent weeks and months, Russia has expanded sabotage operations, including against Polish railways. They've expanded drone and fighter jet overflights into neighboring countries, including the Baltic states. They have expanded destabilization operations, including with explosive parcels, to be flown across Europe. And they've expanded maritime operations threatening cables. Those are the facts. Let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard and Michael Flynn. Tulsi Gabbard, before becoming director of national intelligence, is an activist who for a long time repeated the Kremlin's talking points, whether it was about Ukraine, Europe, or indeed about Syria. I know this quite well. And she always talked about the fact that there was a mystery deep state within the US government. Michael Flynn is a discredited general who is a member of the QAnon conspiracy movement, which famously believes that there's a deep state which is involved with pedophilia trying to overthrow the US government. Flynn's views have been discredited, even his desire that there be martial law in the United States, in other words, military rule. So if you ask me to choose between career officials and those two, that's a perspective where I could gladly make that choice. But let me add this, because I think it's fundamental for your viewers. Ukraine did not invade Russia on February 24th, 2022. NATO did not invade Russia. The European Union did not invade Russia. It was Russia that carried out a full-scale military invasion of a sovereign country, trying to seize the territory and to capture and kill its leaders. And they still are pursuing their invasion. That should be the starting point for any responsible analysis.
All right, Scott, I hear your point, and you point at cracks within the Trump administration, and now let me shift focus to the European Union. What about the cracks there? When you have Viktor Orban suggesting that 24 member states of the European Union have collectively given a loan to Ukraine, and this is the first time this is ever happening, that they're giving a loan to a country outside the Union. Viktor Orban, he doesn't mince his words. He says a war loan inevitably makes its financiers interested in continuation or escalation of the conflict, as a defeat would also mean a financial loss, quote unquote. Who's fomenting the war here?
So again, Viktor Orban, to get to the facts, for many years has been an ally of Vladimir Putin. He was just in Moscow a few weeks ago. For years, since the Russian and full-scale invasion started, Viktor Orban has argued that there should be limits on the defense of Ukraine against that invasion. He has threatened to hold up European Union sanctions against Russia. He's threatened to hold up NATO military aid to Ukraine. He has threatened, as you mentioned, to block financial aid to Ukraine. He is joined in that by a couple of other leaders, Slovakia's Robert Fico and the new president of the Czech Republic, Mr. Babiš. But the fundamental fact here is that 24 of the 27 EU members believe that the defense of Ukraine is something that is needed not only for Ukrainian security, but for European security. Fundamental issue. Under attack day in, day out, from the air, on the ground, by Russia, by missiles, by drones, by the second largest military in the world, Ukraine needs 135 billion euros to finance its government, housing, transportation, education, other public services through 2020. The European Union, despite Orban, despite Fico, was able to authorize that 90 billion euro loan, which covers 2/3 of those needs for the next 2 years.
Scott, I hear your point. Thanks so much for joining us here on the broadcast. There seems to be a division in terms of how this Ukraine war, Russia-Ukraine war that is, and Russia's invasion, how it needs to be tackled going forward. There are differing opinions coming in from the Trump administration when you compare it to the intelligence reports also coming in from the US. So we'll need to wait and watch how this one pans out on the front lines where it really matters most. Scott Lucas, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.